Hello, everyone. Let's get started. We will be taking up the review sheet that I post on eCentennial for test number 2. And in case you didn't know, test 2 is going to be available today after the tutorial, so at around 3:30 until midnight tomorrow, because you have until the end of Friday to do it. So here we go. Excuse me. Let's start with this table here. Complete the following table related to brain structure and their function. Okay, so the first one we have here is the thalamus. Okay, so what is the main function of the thalamus? Well, let's just review other key aspects as well. Instead of just the main function. Gurvinder said, where can we practice more application and multi-select questions? I think there are some more practice at the self quiz there, but we'll be doing some today as well throughout the review here. So hopefully those will help. Okay, so thalamus. It is gray matter. Okay, so you have two of these, and it is a gray matter. Okay, gray matter means it is responsible for processing information rather than just transmitting them. And other things that you should probably remember is that the third ventricle lies between the two thalami that you have, the left and right. Okay. In terms of the function of the thalamus, it will filter and relay sensory information to the appropriate lobe, area in the cerebrum. Okay. So of course, you probably hear me say this quite often. The sensory information exclude smell. Okay. Everything else goes through the thalamus, but not smell. Next, we have the hypothalamus, which is below the thalamus. And this is the master gland, right? It helps maintains homeostasis through hormones. Okay. It works closely with the pituitary gland. Okay, which is the next one here, right? You should probably know that the thalamus, the hypothalamus, the hippocampus, and the amygdala, which we haven't talked about yet, but all these structures, all these four structures, they are part of the what system do they belong to? This, yeah, thank you. Okay, part of the limbic system. And that's the reward system, right? That your body has to basically help you subconsciously decide, what's good for the body and what's not good for the body. And you would tend to avoid situations where it's harmful for your body, and then you would crave to do things that make you feel good, basically. So that is that. Now the pituitary gland is physically connected to the hypothalamus. So this is below the hypothalamus. It basically it's some overlapping function. We'll learn it in a lot more details in lecture 12, but for now we'll say that it is responsible for also secreting hormone. To maintain homeostasis again. Okay, so things like metabolism, things like resource availability, as we will learn in lecture 12. Hippocampus, that is responsible for long-term memory. Long-term memory storage. What about amygdala? In one simple word, what does the amygdala involve in? That's right, emotion. Right? Allows you to feel and express different emotion. Okay. And things that are emotionally charged are more likely to be remembered in the hippocampus. Things that are mundane, boring, has no significance, they tend to be screened out. That's right, long-term memory. Yeah. Next, we have the medulla oblongata. The medulla oblongata is part of the brainstem. Part of the brainstem. Okay. And it contains respiratory center. We learned that way back in lecture 2. Lecture 4 rather. That's how you detect the carbon dioxide level and engage in breathing, right? The medulla oblongata also contains a reflex center for cranial reflexes, such as okay, so example, swallowing, right? Coughing. So all these are cranial reflexes, and it involves the medulla oblongata. I might have mentioned, yeah, vomiting and sneezing. I might have mentioned this in one of the lecture videos. The cough suppressant, right? Some of the cough suppressant contains something called codeine, which is an opioid-based compound. And it basically acts on the medulla oblongata to suppress the coughing. And you might also have heard of the opioid crisis with things like fentanyl, very powerful, strong synthetic opioids. And when people OD on it, the compound basically also suppresses the medulla oblongata. It acts in the same place as the coughing syrup. But of course, the medulla oblongata also contains the respiratory center. So when someone OD on the fentanyl, they basically their breathing rate slows down and eventually completely stop. That's why it could be fatal. Okay. Next, excuse me. Next, we have the reticular formation. Reticular formation is part of the it's a web of gray matter. Web of gray matter. You should have an idea of what's gray and what's white. And we did a table to separate them in the study guide for lecture 6, I believe. Yeah. So there's a web of gray matter, and it constantly receive signals from various sensory input and send them up to your cerebrum. And by doing that, it maintains consciousness. Okay, even when you are sleeping, okay, you can wake up anytime because the reticular formation is still on a background level, receiving all these sensory inputs. Next, we have the corpus callosum, and you should know by now, you've heard me say it enough times, that it is a band of white matter, okay, white matter that allows communication. You can probably finish this sentence for me, right? Communication between the hemispheres. Okay, when the right brain needs to communicate with the left brain, all that information is sent through the corpus callosum. Just give me a moment here. Sorry, I gotta blow my nose. So some people who have like a seizure from epilepsy, it's basically uncontrolled firing of neurons, and they could spread from one hemisphere to the other hemisphere, right? So in extreme cases, one of the treatment is actually to sever part of the corpus callosum, to cut it off, so that the seizure is not going to spread from one part of the brain to the other. Surprisingly, cutting part of the corpus callosum does not have any measurable negative effect on the person. So you can look that up if you're interested. Next, we have the cerebellum. Okay, you can see the cerebellum has a bigger slot because there are three functions that we talked about, right? So cerebellum is responsible for maintaining posture and balance. Right? It ensures smooth execution of motion. And lastly, it is the place to store skill memories, okay, which is different from like factual memories, right? These are things that you do with your body, with your hands, with legs, right? Like a dance routine, riding a bike, typing, all those things. They are stored in the cerebellum. Pons basically it allows tracks to connect various parts of the brain together. Okay, tracks are bundle of axons, right? So everything that's going up, the ascending track is going to have to pass through the pons. It's basically like a bridge that connects different parts together. Okay, last one here, the choroid plexus. Again, you might remember that. That is the vascular structure found in the ventricles. Okay, ventricles of the brain, where you have 4 ventricles, and you would find the choroid plexus in all of them. And the function of the choroid plexus is they produce CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. Okay. Does anybody have any question about any of these structures? Do you want me to elaborate on any of them? I think I covered most of the structures that we learned. If you think of another one that it's not on the list, let me know. We can talk about it. Okay, moving on. Complete the following chart for the key functional areas of the brain. Okay, so there is a brain here. And we have to highlight the primary motor cortex. Okay, so what you need to do here is to find the central sulcus, which is this thing right here. Okay, central sulcus that divides the frontal lobe from the parietal lobe. Okay, and the primary motor cortex is located right here. Okay. And the function of the primary motor cortex is what? Does anyone want to tell me what it does? First of all, I should probably tell you that it is found on the precentral gyrus. Gyrus is a bump, right? So it's found on this location here, the bump in front of the sulcus. And what is the function of the primary motor cortex? What do we use it for? Huh? Okay, receiving sensory input for movement. Okay. Okay, this is more for voluntary movement. Okay, voluntary movement. Okay, so anytime you move, voluntary muscle movement, we can say. Anytime you move any part of the body, it initiates from the primary motor cortex. The primary somatosensory cortex, that's the one where you will be receiving the sensory input. So over here you have the central sulcus again, and the primary somatosensory cortex will be right here. Okay. And just for safe measure, this is found on the post-central gyrus. Okay. And the function of this is to process somatosensory information. Somatosensory means bodily senses, right? I keep on telling you, it's things that you can feel with your skin. Okay, yeah, so like things like pain, touch, temperature, all these things. Okay, texture, pressure. Okay. Also in class, I told you that the primary motor cortex and the primary somatosensory cortex, they are zoned, right? So this part would particularly be controlling, say, the right side of your face. And then this would be controlling the right hand, right? Each section is dedicated to a particular part of the body on the other side. Okay. So it's contralateral control, meaning like on the other side of the midline. Okay. So here's another area, the Broca's area. For most people, the Broca's area is located on the left side, right? Left side of the brain, right here in the frontal lobe. And I think we talked about this last week as well when we took up the lab. But the Broca's area is responsible basically for speech, right? I have to summarize it in one word. To talk in an articulate manner, right? To use the right words, right sentence structure, all that stuff, right? Speech. I'm not talking about like learning a new language, right? It's like talking in your own native language too, right? That involves the Broca's area, right? Having the right sentence structure and so on and so forth. If you damage this area, you will have Broca's aphasia. Okay? Aphasia. It's in the fill in the blanks that we did. Okay, what about the Wernicke's area? Where do you find the Wernicke's area? What lobe is it gonna be in? Anybody remember? Wernicke's area. Yep, also on the left side, but the temporal lobe is correct. Okay, so it's going to be right here. Okay, just under the lateral sulcus. And that's the central sulcus. That's the lateral sulcus or a lateral fissure. Both is okay, and that's where it's going to be. And the function of Wernicke's area is to basically understand verbal and written communication. Not just to understand what you're hearing, what other people are saying, but also understand what you're reading as well. All right. So that's the four main areas that we talked about. Next, describe the anatomy of the spinal cord, and then you touch a hot surface, describe the neuronal pathway involved in processing this information. We can do both at the same time. So here is a slice of spinal cord. Slice of spinal cord right here. Okay, and then we have the butterfly structure. Okay. This is the dorsal side, the back, the back side, and then this over here, that would be the front. Okay, the anterior side. And so in the center, we talk about there is the central canal, remember? Central canal, that's where the CSF is going to be going down all the way to the bottom of the spinal cord. Now we did this a couple of times already, so let's see if you remember. We're gonna have a neuron that's going to be going in at the back. What type of neuron is this blue one? Do you remember what type of neuron this is? It is the afferent actually, and it's sensory. That's right. So this is a sensory neuron, and it's afferent. The way I remember it is like afferent versus like efferent. Efferent, right? E for exit. Okay, so the efferent is the one that actually comes out, that exits from the front. Okay, so that's the flow of information, right? And of course, located within the butterfly, the gray matter, that's where you will find the interneuron, right? That will process the information. So that's the sensory neuron, that's the interneuron, and then coming out, we have the efferent pathway, which is the motor neuron. Okay, so that creates a reflex arc, right? Reflex pathway, and it only involves the spinal cord. So we call that the spinal reflex, right? Touching a hot surface, instinctively taking your hand off. That's a spinal reflex. But we know that is not all, because many times at the same time that your hand is removing from the hot surface, information is actually going up to your brain as well, right? It's going to go up in these tracks. I'm just going to draw one so it's not too overwhelming. So it's going to cross the middle, and then it's going to go to the primary somatosensory cortex. Okay, Do we know where it crosses? Does anybody remember? Yeah. It's gonna go through the thalamus as well. Thalamus is gonna be like right here. It's gonna go through the thalamus. But where are we gonna cross? The medulla oblongata. That's correct. Medulla oblongata. Okay. And then the information is gonna come back down, right? It might involve doing other things like blowing your hand, rubbing your hands together, putting it under cold water. Then that would be the primary motor cortex. Okay, so it's gonna come down, across the middle, and then down at the front. So at the front here, that's the descending track. And over here, that's the ascending track. Okay. So again, right, this is the reflex, the initial removing your hand. This other stuff that requires like maybe previous experience or things that you've done before, that comes from the higher order thinking from the brain, right? And those things would be originating from the primary motor cortex. Okay, so again, right, maybe getting some ice packs, maybe, putting a Band-Aid on, so on and so forth. That's going to be from the brain. Does anybody have any question about this here? Okay. There will be some diagram questions in the on the quiz. Sorry, on the test. It shouldn't be too hard. Let's do the pose here. Okay. Go ahead. Identify the indicator part.
Professor,
Yes, Mohammed.
we didn't complete the number 4, last page.
Yeah, describe the anatomy of the spinal cord, right? We kind of did everything in the same diagram,
No,
right?
number 4. I'm talking about number 4, not number 3.
Oh yeah, then the when you touch the hot surface, describe the neuronal pathway, right? So you touch the hot surface, that information is going to travel through the sensory neuron, right? And it's going to go up to the brain at the same time that it's going to go back out through the like all these
okay.
drawing. That's basically the pathway, right?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay,
Thank you.
Number 5, please. I mean, you should know this, right? I've been telling you since day one that we see this diagram, right? So if you see this question on the test, you should be very happy because you would know the answer to it, right? Okay, so there we go. Everybody got it right. That is excellent. It is the corpus callosum. Very good. And just to point out a few things here, right? Okay, what if I'm pointing to this thing under the corpus callosum? What would that be? Okay, let's try again. Go ahead. I'm talking about the blue part now. Right here. Do you know what that is? Yep. So a couple ways I can ask the question, right? The most straightforward way is I point to this thing and then I ask you what it does. Sorry, I ask you what it's called. Okay, but I can also ask you, what does it do, right? Or I can ask you what happens if that particular structure is damaged. So things to consider. Yeah, so the blue part is lateral ventricle. Everybody got it. Everybody who chose an answer got it right. Okay, let's try another one. Okay, what about this next diagram here? Number 6, identify the indicator part. Okay, thank you. Most of you got it right. This is the pons. Okay, you will know as a pons because it's like an oval structure here. Okay, that's the pons. That's the medulla oblongata. Okay. Choose cerebrum, cerebellum. Cerebellum is this guy at the back. Cerebellum is at the back. Okay, the one that helps you maintain posture and balance, right? Okay, so that takes us to the next one. This is another way I can ask the question. I don't tell you what it is, and then I ask you which is not a function of that. Not a function, okay? Not a function. Yeah, pretty good. Okay, we talked about the functions various times already. Store motor skills, which is like skill memories, allow smooth execution of motion, maintain posture and balance. Maintaining alertness and consciousness, that is the function of the reticular formation. We wrote this down in the chart on the first page. Okay, it's a web of gray matter. Okay. So another one here, we just color this on the previous page as well. Okay, so you have to identify the central sulcus. And this is in front of the central sulcus, which means it is the primary motor cortex. Okay, good work. Just a couple more over here. Okay, this one's a little bit all over the place, but that's okay. We'll talk about it. This is actually the thalamus. Okay, thalamus. They are quite big, like again, like a pair of eggs that are sitting right in the middle of the brain. Between these two things, which we cannot see, right? You only see the two oval structure, right? But if you were to, open it up, you would see a space in the middle. The space in the middle would be the third ventricle. Okay, but these are the left and right thalamus. Okay, so the correct answer is D. The pineal gland, one of you chose it. A pineal gland is located at the back, really back, maybe somewhere around here. That is where you will secrete the melatonin, right, to help you go to sleep. So that's that. This one we labeled quite a while ago. It's probably a good idea to refresh your memory on what this is. This is pointing at that little triangle space right here. Oh, you guys surprised me. Most people got it right. I expect a lot of people wouldn't remember this, but you do. That's great. That is the dural venous sinus. It is formed by the dura mater. The dura mater is normally fused together, two layers, but then it opens up along the center here, and it creates a dural venous sinus. And this is where you will drain excess CSF. Okay. Okay. This region in the frontal lobe is called the I'm just gonna do the next couple ones here, right? We circled this before already. Hopefully you know that that is the Broca's area. That allows you to produce fluent, articulate speech. Okay, now this is a good one. Let's try this one. Go ahead. Okay. Oh, Victoria asked me what was number 7 again. I'm gonna get back to that in a second. Okay, please hold. All right. So let's finish this question first. Damage to the indicated area. So first of all, to know this, you have to know what this area is, right? Okay. So this area is behind the central sulcus. It is the primary somatosensory. Primary somatosensory cortex. Okay, so is the somatosensory cortex, does that allow you to move, or does that allow you to feel? And you have to think about that, right? Yeah, it doesn't have the word motor in it, so it allows you to feel things, right? And then the second thing you have to know for this question is, which side of the brain are we looking at? Are we looking at the left side of the brain or the right side of the brain? Hey, hopefully you've seen enough brains by now that you know this is the left half. Okay, so if you damage this, you will complete paralysis. That's not true, right? This does not even have anything to do with movement. It is the motor cortex that does the movement, right? Unable to feel from right side of the body. That's the correct answer, okay? Because the left half of the brain feels the right, receive sensory information from the right half, right? Again, has nothing to do with moving. Producing speech, it has to do with the Broca's area. Damage to vision would occur in the occipital lobe. So the correct answer is B. Okay. Number 7, the correct answer is D. Like that's not the function. Hima asks, if damage primary motor cortex, yes. But not full paralysis, right? Like depending which primary motor cortex, right? If you damage the left primary motor cortex, then the right half of the body would be like paralyzed, right? But if it's the right half, then it's the left side. And you know, just to clarify, it's let's say like this, okay? Let's say if you damage like just this part, you're not gonna get full paralysis on the right side. Remember I said the cortex is zoned to a different area of the body. So whatever that part of the brain is corresponding to, right? This part happens to be the right side of the face. Then you won't be able to move the muscle on the right side. You know, some people, right? Like you might see on TV, or like maybe someone you know, if they suffer from a stroke, right? Their face might be a little bit droopy, right? That's because they damage this particular part of the brain. They can't move the muscle voluntarily on the right side of their face. But if it's a little bit lower, right, then it might not be affecting the face anymore. You won't be able to move, say, part of the hand. Okay, it depends how wide the area is, right? It's very rare that you will have full paralysis, right? That the whole section here is damaged. That's very quite rare. Does that answer your question? Both? What do you mean both? Sorry.
Hi.
Hi.
So does it mean the primary motor cortex, both, and the primary somatory cortex? If damaged both, it will be paralysis?
If you damaged only the primary motor cortex, then it will be paralysis. But I was saying, right, it will not be the whole body paralysis, right? It depends on which part is damaged. Then only that specific part on the opposite side of the body will be paralyzed, right? Does that?
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
Professor,
Thank you.
how we can know about the specifically?
Oh yeah, yeah. You won't have to. I won't test you that on the test.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
yeah. But there is a picture in the PowerPoint that shows you which part corresponds to what part of the body. Okay, but you don't have to memorize that for the test. Okay. Oh, I just remember something. I should mention it before I forget. That I posted this announcement. I don't know if you guys had a chance to read it. Our program, the pre-health program, is currently undergoing comprehensive program quality review. That's something that we do every 5 years as part of our quality assurance process. Okay, and in part of that review, we need to gather feedbacks from current as well as former students. So there is a survey. It will only take you about 10 to 15 minutes to do, and most of it is just multiple choice questions. They give you statements and ask you whether you agree with it or not. And then there's some open-ended questions that ask you, about things that we could do to improve the program. So if you could please do that survey for us, that would be much appreciated, because we do need to have the data, right? That's how we improve ourselves and make the program more accessible to student, and to grow. So please help us with the survey. Thank you in advance. Let's go back to our thing here. Okay, so that is basically done for the multiple choice part. Let's take a look at these situations here. These are all diseases. It's good to have have them all in the same place, so you'll be able to have a reference for them if you need them. So hydrocephalus, what's the main problem here? Why what causes the hydrocephalus? Block CSF, yeah, but it's no drainage. Exactly, all those are correct. So the flow of CSF, cerebrospinal fluid, is blocked. Can't drain them, right? Can't flow. It's blocked, and then that causes it to build up in the brain, and all those extra fluid will push against the walls of the ventricle, causing them to become enlarged. We have hydrocephalus. Meningitis is the inflammation of the meninges. Okay, could be caused by bacterial infection, viral infection, and even fungal infection. Okay, the person will suffer from headaches, fever, stiff neck. Fortunately, meningitis, the bacterial kind anyways, can be prevented through vaccination. Some of these things are not related to brain necessarily, right? It's like everything in the unit, right? So glaucoma is increase in eye pressure, basically. Okay, and this leads to damage to the optic nerve. Okay. You will progressively lose peripheral vision and ultimately lose vision completely. There's no cure for glaucoma, but interventions can lower the eye pressure to slow the progression of the disease. Astigmatism, that is when you have an uneven lens. Okay, and instead of having a single focal point at the fovea, it causes the scattering of light. Scattering of light rays entering the eye. Right, so things appears to be spread out, scattered. Presbyopia. Anybody want to try that one? Presbyopia. What happens in presbyopia?
Visual accommodation, decrease in visual accommodation.
Exactly, right? So presbyopia is as we get older and older, we have we basically lose the ability to visually accommodate. What that means is you cannot change the shape of the lens quickly as you shift the focus. There are other things that happens as well during the shift of focus, right? But that's the main one, changing the shape of the lens. And then, you know, because you lose the elasticity in those suspensory ligaments, you're not able to change the thickness of the lens as quickly. Therefore, you cannot maintain focus. You need reading glasses. Presbyopia. Floaters. Floaters are basically when you have debris that builds up in the aqueous humor. This is more of a problem for people with very bad eyesight. If you look at a bright blue sky, or even if you look at a bright computer screen and you blink, sometimes you see these things that are just floating across your eyes, right? So those things are called floaters. And not everybody has it. Like if you have good vision, you might not see them. And again, it's a good thing. You don't want the floaters. Cataracts. Cataracts is the lens, like the crystals, the protein crystals in the lens starts to sorry, the proteins in the lens starts to crystallize. Okay, and as a result, it turns the lens opaque. Okay, so the lens becomes opaque. Okay. You can't really reverse the process, but you can get a new lens. And they could surgically give you like an artificial one, or someone from a lens from a diseased donor. My mom actually just told me she had, her eye doctor told her she has cataracts, so now she has to see if surgeries can be done to replace the lens. Quite common as part of aging as well. Myopia. This is nearsightedness. Okay, so the eyeball is too long. Okay, you're focusing in front of the fovea. We had an extensive discussion on these two things in lecture 7 recording, lecture 7 tutorial recordings. So make sure you go through those again if you're confused. And for hyperopia, this is farsightedness. The eyeball is too short. Okay, so myopia, you cannot see far away. Hyperopia, you cannot see nearby. Okay. Let's try number 14 here. As light ray enters your eye, list all the structure it passes through. Okay, so we can do that on the side here. Okay, so the first thing that the light ray will hit would be the lens, right? No, not the lens, sorry, the cornea. The cornea. Okay. After the cornea, it will be the aqueous humor. Then it will be the lens. Okay. After the lens, it will be the vitreous humor. And then it will be the retina. So that's basically everything that is going to pass through. I guess like if you really want in front of the lens, you will go through the pupil, right? But it's just an opening, right? You don't actually hit the structure. It's just like passing through the hole, right? But that's basically all the key structures. Now for the neuronal pathway, right? After the retina, right? You're gonna hit all the cone cells and the rod cells and the retina, and then it's gonna go through the optic nerve, And the optic nerve will cross in the middle at the optic chiasma, which then continue on to the brain through the optic tract, past the thalamus, and eventually to the occipital lobe. Okay, so that's a whole pathway. Right? Of course, the light is converted into action potential at the retina, where the cone cells and rod cells are, and then those electrical signals will continue to travel towards the brain. All right. Let's take a look at this. Label the ear and state a function of each. Okay, so we can do that. Start with the outside of the ear. This is the pinna, the external ear, right? This is the ear canal or the auditory canal. Over here, that would be the tympanic membrane. Which converts sound energy into movement. On the medial side of the tympanic membrane, we have the three ossicles, starting with the malleus. Next, we have the incus. And then we have the stapes. Okay, you can use the other names as well, like the hammer, anvil, and the stirrup. Now, pressing on the stapes is pressing on the oval window, which you cannot really see here, but there is another label here that would be for the round window. Okay, and you might remember we talked about the relationship between the oval window and the round window. When you push into the oval window, it creates high pressure inside the cochlea, and the round window will bulge out to relieve those pressure. Over here, we have these semicircular canal. For detecting head movements and body movements, because like when you spin like that, your body and head both moves, right? So it's primarily we would say for head movement, but whenever you have body motions, that also causes your head to move. Right? The semicircular canal is involved. This thing over here, that's the cochlea. That's for hearing sound. And of course, we have this tube here to equalize the pressure from the surrounding. That would be the Eustachian tube. Okay. That is all. All right, I'm going to take up a few multiple choice questions here for the digestive system. Which of the following is not a function of the digestive system? So ingestion of food, that is a function. You put your food in the mouth and swallow it. Absorption of nutrients and molecules, that's true. That occurs at the jejunum and the ileum. Okay. Jejunum plus ileum. Elimination of digestible waste, that happens at the colon. Movement of nutrients to cells. That's not the function of the digestive system. That's just something that happens as a result of a membrane transport, right? That you learned last semester. Which of the following is not a function of saliva? So saliva contains amylase, which begins the digestion of starch, right? So start the digestion of protein, that actually does not happen. Okay? This happens at the stomach when you have the pepsin, right? Moisten the food for swallowing, that's true. Start the digestion of starch, that's true, right? Because of amylase, I told you. Remove microbes, that's also true because saliva contains lysozyme, right? Lysozyme. It's part of your chemical barrier. Food that leaves the mouth and enters the pharynx is in the form of a bolus. Like the kind that you get, it's in the stomach, right? After you digest the bulk of the fibers and things in your food, you end up with a soapy acidic mixture that's called a chyme. That's not a word, I just made that up. Rugai is talking about the foldings in the stomach. Those foldings will disappear when you're full. And gastric juices, again, it doesn't make sense in the context of this. This is talking about the mixture of HCl, pepsinogen, or pepsin, all those mixture in the stomach acid. That is the gastric juice. Carbohydrates are first chemically digested in the mouth. Okay, for the stomach, it is the protein that get first, the location where protein first get digested. For the duodenum, that's where the lipids first get digested. By the time you get to large intestine, everything is basically digested. Okay, the sole function of the large intestine is to absorb the water that's left over from the digestive process. What prevents acid from backing up into the esophagus from the stomach? That would be the cardiac sphincter. Okay, if the cardiac sphincter does not function properly, then they come back up and it could give you a heartburn. And that's it for the multiple choice. Okay, so let's label this diagram as our final page here. I mean the part that is confusing is like all the brain parts that you have to remember, right? I think I make this test relatively easier because there's so many things to remember. So you know, of course study, but like don't overly concern yourself too much. Okay, so over here, what do we have? We have does anybody know what that is? It's a little bit obscure. But anybody want to try? Michelle, yeah.
Parotid gland.
That is right. Your ear is right here. Okay, that's the ear, and then that's the salivary gland that's next to your ear. That is a parotid. Parotid gland. Okay. On that note, we have a few other glands. You have one underneath your tongue. That would be the sublingual gland. And over here, even further down, you have this submandibular. Submandibular gland. Right? This is your mandible, right? Your jaw. It's right here. Right? You can almost feel it. The sublingual gland. That's the one that your dentist pokes at when they're cleaning your teeth, right? That tube that sucks your saliva. That's where they're aiming at when all the saliva comes out. Now, this is the mouth, right? Very underwhelming. You can almost guarantee I will not ask you for that on the test. This here is the tongue. This is another one that's a little bit tricky. Anybody know what that is? Let's talk about this thing right here. This thing that's right there.
Uvula.
That is the uvula. Very good. Okay, the uvula prevents food from going up to your nose, right? When you're swallowing. It's an extension of the soft palate. Okay, that's the trachea, and behind the trachea, we have the this tube right here. That is the esophagus. Right. And you might remember we talked about this during the tutorial. The esophagus is made up, it's lined with the stratify squamous epithelial tissue. Okay. I missed one here. That is the pharynx, the back of the throat, right? The where the common passageway of food and liquid and water. Okay. This is the diaphragm, and there's a hole in the diaphragm right here that allows the esophagus to go through. That is called the esophageal hiatus. Okay, it's talking about the hole in the diaphragm that lets the esophagus pass through, and other things needs to pass through as well, right? Like your aorta, for example. Oh, just notice I spelled palate wrong. Sorry, with the A there. Over here, that is the liver. Okay. Liver is responsible for, in the case of, digestive system, it produces bile, right? For the emulsification of fat. Now you cannot see it here because it's hiding, but not hiding completely. There is a little bit of it protruding here. Right? It's right there. That would be your gallbladder, right? Gallbladder. That stores the bile. It's okay to remove your gallbladder, but if you remove your gallbladder, you have to watch out and not have too many greasy diet, right? Okay, because you will not be able to store bile. You will just have to make it on demand. Okay, this one right here, this is another tricky one. It's behind the stomach. It's not part of the digestive system.
Pancreas.
Okay. Good try. A few good try here. Anyone else?
Spleen.
Spleen is correct. Yes, that is the spleen. That's for storing a little bit of blood in case you have excessive blood loss. It's also a lymphatic organ, right? You can't really see the kidney here. The kidney would be like behind all this stuff, and then you will have a kidney there, and then you will have another kidney there. Okay, so we'll learn the kidneys later on. Someone mentioned that the pancreas, that is also a good choice. That's the pancreas right here. Okay, so this thing that has lots of like knobs on it, that's the pancreas. Okay. Pancreas, of course, secretes the pancreatic juice, which helps neutralize the HCl, the chyme, right, as it's going to the duodenum. And it also contains a mixture of digestive enzyme. The esophageal hiatus is just like a hole in the diaphragm that allows the esophagus to go through. Because if you think about it, if the diaphragm like completely separates the thoracic cavity with the abdominal cavity, then nothing really goes through, right? So you really need to have an opening, right? Opening for the esophagus to pass through. That's all. It's just a hole in the diaphragm, a gap. Okay. We have the stomach right here. Stomach. Okay. Now, you cannot really see it in this diagram because there's no arrow to it. But let's see if it's gonna make sense. This is the stomach, and then the first part of the stomach the first part that the stomach connects to, the part that I have colored, that would be the first part of your small intestine. That's the duodenum. Okay, that's where digestions primarily occurs. Now I'm gonna draw a little bit more of it. It's hiding behind the colon here, but if I were able to see through the colon, right, that's where the duodenum is gonna be. Okay. Now the duodenum will connect to the next part, right, which is roughly here. That's all this stuff. That would be the jejunum. And then after the jejunum, you will have the ileum. Okay? So we have a thing pointing here. That is the ileum. And all this stuff that doesn't have a label, that's the jejunum. All right, so duodenum, first yellow part here, jejunum and ileum. The digestion happens in the duodenum, and then the absorption happens in the jejunum and the ileum. Okay, hope this makes sense to you. We have the cecum here. The cecum. Cecum. C-E-C-U-M. And there is a little thing dangling from the cecum. That would be the appendix. Okay. Then the person can get an infected appendix, which you will have appendicitis, and you have to remove that before it bursts. We have, I'm going to keep going up here. We have the ascending colon, transverse colon, and then we have the descending colon. Okay, I'm just going to color all the parts in alternating colors so you can see. All right. So going up, that's the ascending. Oops. Okay, goes up. Transverse, there's no label for that, but you know it's called transverse. We have the descending colon. Going sideways, that's the sigmoid. Sigmoid colon. Rectum. And the anus. Okay. Now, just one last thing. Along the way, we are going to have various sphincters, right? So there is your cardiac sphincter, preventing the reflux. We have a pyloric sphincter that controls how much of the chyme can go on. Right? You don't want all of it to flood into the duodenum all at once. You're going to overwhelm it. You're going to go a little bit at a time, so you have time to neutralize them as they come in. There's another one here, the ileocecal sphincter, right? All these is in the study guide, right? And finally, there is the internal and the external sphincter. Okay, so the purpose of a sphincter is to keep things moving in one direction. There's no backflow of your digestive contents. Okay, so that's it. Hopefully, it helps you review a little bit. Like I said, the test should not be too difficult, and you have until the end of tomorrow to do it. Just before you go, next week, let's take a look at the schedule next week. We will meet, I believe, on Tuesday, right, for next week. And we will be doing the renal system. Now, that is a very challenging lesson. Okay, there's a lot of things to learn and remember. So after your test, please make sure you do watch a little bit of the recording. It will make it easier for you to understand the whole thing. When will today's video be posted? Yeah, I'm gonna post it right away after class. It just takes some time for YouTube to process it, okay? But you will be able to see the recording. Okay, so once again, we will meet on the 22nd, which is next Tuesday at 12:30. If you have any additional question about the test, please feel free to email me. Good luck with the test, and I'll see you next week. Okay, have a good one, guys. Thank you. Bye. For the multi-select question, it depends. Sometimes they have 2 answers, sometimes they have 3 answers. There's no, that's why they are challenging, right? I understand, because you don't know how many answers you're supposed to look for, right? But you do get graded based on the number of correct answers that you've selected. Okay, so like selecting all of them would not be a good strategy. Okay? You really do have to see which one are the correct ones. Yeah, hopefully that helps. Sorry, might not be the answer you were looking for. Mohammed, I see you are unmute. Do you have something you want to ask, or?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay, all right then. Okay, thanks again, guys. Take care.